I had a number of people on Twitter, at the Jeff Schlegel is the Twitter handle, information in the description box down below, that asked me, was I going to do team by team season recaps for the 2016 season? And some people were begging me and imploring me, some people demanding. And I was like, you know what? Well, I'll make you a deal. This tweet gets X number of retweets, I'll do it. So, of course, relatively quickly, you jerks did it. I should have made the retweet goal much, much higher than I did. I think I did only 50, and I should have done like 150 or 200. Just so that way that message got spread to X number more people. But it is what it is. You jerks win. Ha ha ha. Joke's on me. Fuck you. So you're getting them team by team season recaps for the 2016 NFL season. Now, granted, these are not going to be the most in-depth videos, probably going to be 8 to 12 minutes on average if I can help it, other than maybe the Bears and a couple of their special situations, because right now we're starting to get into the heart of the draft season, and that's where the lion's share of the focus and the attention is going to be for me. But, we're coming to the tail end of the 2016 NFL season, so why not take a look back at the season that was and look ahead to the offseason and what teams need to do as they prepare for 2017. So we officially kick this off, and for some reason it is no grand surprise that we kick it off with the team that we kick it off with, the Cleveland Browns, or as we know I refer to them as, the Cleveland Skidmarks, because they are indeed the Skidmarks of the NFL. Now, when you sit there and think about it, during the 2015 season, you end up in a position where you get the second overall pick in the 2016 draft. You're sitting there thinking to yourself, hey, you know what? We've hit rock bottom. Even for the Browns, we've hit rock bottom. There's nowhere to go but up from here. And to be fair, that's true. The Skidmarks managed to surpass expectations. They did go somewhere, and they went up. They went up from the number 2 overall pick to having the worst record in the league in 2016 and ending up with the number 1 overall pick in the 2017 NFL draft. So my whole philosophy is if you're going to suck, go all the way, and nobody does it better and more consistently than the Cleveland Browns. Maybe someday they'll actually get it right where they don't have to continue to suck anymore. If the Cavs can win a championship in the NBA, someday maybe, just maybe, the Browns can win a championship once again in the NFL. But when you look at this team, you had moved on from Mike Pettin, you got rid of Johnny Manziel, you traded off Justin Gilbert. Here's Hue Jackson, your new head coach. And you look at it, this is actually a guy that's coached at the NFL level before as a head coach with the Oakland Raiders. You can surmise whether or not he got screwed out of their job or whatever the case might be. But here's a guy with previous head coaching experience, an accomplished offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, a guy you're bringing into a situation where you need help everywhere, but you want to be able to score some points, and you would assume that Hue Jackson would be able to do that. So the most important thing the Cleveland Browns had to do in 2016, frankly, was not win games during the season, but that was hit a home run in the 2016 NFL Draft. Well, somewhere along the way, things went askew. For some reason, Hue Jackson had this ridiculous belief that it was wise to bet on RG&E. Now, notice again, I will emphasize RG&E. Now, being somebody that's lived out here in Richmond since 2013, a lot of Redskins fans here, they call him RG&E, and they call him that for a freaking reason. So if that's his name, why in the hell would you stake potentially your entire second chance as a head coach at the NFL level, knowing you're going into the hornet's nest of a situation where the Cleveland Browns love to dispense and dispose of their head coaches as quickly as possible? Why in the bluest of blue fucks would you want to gamble on RG&E? Not just taking a chance on him, mind you, but believing he could actually be the starter, actually stay on the field, actually be healthy, actually be productive, play well. I mean, that's just madness. And I still think that's in part what led to part of the reasoning for them passing on Carson Wentz and trading out of that pick and making that epic disaster of a decision. As I've talked about so often with the Cleveland Skidmarks, they do the same things over and damn over again, and they repeat those same mistakes, then are surprised when the results aren't any different. It's like the true definition of insanity. So they bring in other people to do the exact same thing. Then you'll have some knuckleheads that try to defend it and say, well, this time it's different. Look at all the picks they've got. If you don't know what the fuck you're doing, it doesn't matter. And clearly, at the end of the day, the Cleveland Browns don't know what the fuck they're doing. Hence, why they did go somewhere. They went up from the number 2 overall pick in the 2016 NFL draft to the number 1 overall pick in the 2017 NFL draft. Now, part of that sure is you let a couple of players walk in free agency for inexplicable reasons. Travis Benjamin's just one that comes to mind. Mitchell Schwartz is another one. It wasn't cost prohibitive from a salary cap perspective. Why in the hell wouldn't you keep those guys? You have to have somebody that's able to play at the NFL level. And I just thought that was completely and totally ridiculous. Now, it wasn't all a loss for the Cleveland Browns. I think the biggest victory of all from this season, other than obviously beating the San Diego Chargers late in the year to not go 0-16, is the fact that this organization is staying patient, that they're giving Hue Jackson more time. Because the Cleveland Browns of old, if Hue Jackson goes 1-15, he might be a one-and-done guy. He might be shown the door. And again, as we've talked about so often with the Cleveland Browns, part of the reason they never get anywhere in a division where Marvin Lewis has been the head coach in Cincinnati since 2003, Mike Tomlin's been the guy since 2007 in Pittsburgh, and John Harbaugh has been the guy since 2008 in Baltimore, is because the stupid Skidmarks rotate through coaches every 1 to 2 damn years. The other 3 teams in your division that are consistently banging the past several years for playoff positioning and being at least competitive, if nothing else, keep the same guy around, keep the same leadership in their front office. But the Cleveland Browns want to revolt and do things different, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. It's not hard to figure out. But the fact that they're willing to sit there and stick with Hue Jackson, at least for another year, is progress. Because at this point in time, you threw the Cleveland Browns, you had to know your situation was so bad that even if you bring in the best dude, even if you brought in Belichick, this is going to take at least 2, if not 3 years, in order for him to be able to get it turned around to get you at least into playoff position. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That's how bad it is. Even the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick, couldn't get these guys to the playoffs year 1, and I'm not even sure he could get into the playoffs in year 2. I mean, Jesus. Because the talent cupboard is so very bare. And it's so sad to sit there and watch Joe Thomas have to waste these remaining years of his career and his entire career, frankly, in such a shitty situation, such a crappy organization. Hence why I call him, again, the Skidmarks. Now, you did have some nice performances this year for the Browns. Terrell Pryor was a real revelation at the wide receiver position. You're talking about a guy, converted quarterback from Ohio State. He came out and he played well this year. He's about to get paid. Isaiah Crowell, their running back, formerly undrafted. You look at him, and he didn't break 1,000 yards, but he was averaging 4.8, 4.9 yards per carry. He reached, I think, the maximum of what his potential is at the NFL level. So again, when you look at guys like Isaiah Crowell having his best year as a pro, Terrell Pryor having by far his best year as a pro, that means somebody's coaching them up right. That means Hue Jackson and that offensive staff were doing something right. Then during the course of the season, they're able to get a little bit of an influx of talent trading for Jamie Collins from the New England Patriots. They give up, a compensatory 3rd-round pick? Man, that was a wonderful deal for the Browns. You want to worry about culture, and you want to worry about locker room, and you want to worry about attitude and leadership and all these other things. But you got to get talent first. And if you can't draft them, and you can't necessarily get a bunch of the guys to sign in free agency, then you got to get them however you can. And this was a way to get an impact player that they desperately, sorely needed, that could play in a 3-4 or a 4-3, frankly, and get them and not have to pay a whole lot in terms of draft pick compensation. It was a brilliant move. It was almost an anti-Cleveland Browns move. And frankly, they need those type of moves because the 2016 draft class, as with so many other draft classes in Cleveland, frankly wasn't very good. Corey Coleman, their 1st-round pick, when they finally took somebody in round 1, he had a couple of moments, but he was injured for part of the time. And then you had all the crap that was at the quarterback position. I mean, this is a team that started, 5 different starting quarterbacks in 2016? That comes back again to passing on Carson Wentz and betting on RGIII. When you do stupid shit like that, you get exactly what you deserve. Emmanuel Ogbah showed some flashes of at least being a potential starting NFL player. Carl Nassib, Sean Coleman, we'll see what happens with them going forward. You just look at this draft class, though, and all the picks they had, and all of this and all of that. They traded down multiple times. They traded down from number 2 to number 8, and then again from number 8 to number 15. And it sounds great in theory to play all this fantasy draft crap of talking about accumulating all these picks. But sometimes, as is the case with 2011, when they were in the 6th slot and they could have just taken Julio Jones like the hell they should have, you pass on those marquee talents, those big-name players that you're in a position to get, And all the while, lo and behold, what happens is you end up getting guys that are several steps below, and or you just end up missing, because that's what the Cleveland Browns do consistently. Consistently. It's just astounding that people still defend this crap. But look at them. They trade down. No Carson Wentz. I mean, this was like tailor-made for you. The Rams screwed up and took off number 1. Carson Wentz is there for you at number 2. Take the young quarterback and build around him. And when I hear reports that the Cleveland Browns didn't think that Carson Wentz could be a top 20 quarterback in the National Football League, okay, that's ridiculous, but you think Cody Kessler can? I mean, I'm not going to totally bag on Cody Kessler because I thought he did okay in a horrible situation in terms of the total of the offensive talent around him and the crappy defense that was supporting him. But Jesus Christ, they really thought that Carson went. Now, again, this is the same organization heading into the 2014 draft that spent $100,000 for an analytical study to figure out who was the quarterback of that draft, most likely to be a franchise guy. Their information said Teddy Bridgewater, and they took Johnny Manziel because that's what the Cleveland Browns do. 4 wide receivers, 1 tight end, just the Cleveland Browns crap. Now, with that said, you would say now is that they have truly bottomed out, and there's nowhere for them to go but up. Now, they need to get more out of their 2016 draft class. That would be a good place to start. But the good thing for them is they have about as much cap space as anybody. You talk about a team almost with $100 million after some carryover from 2016 to carry into this offseason, almost $100 million. Now, typically what would happen is teams that have drafted well and hit on some young players will be able to take some of that money and re-sign guys while they still have them under contract and get them locked up long-term because it ultimately ends up being a little bit cheaper that way. But, of course, the Cleveland Browns don't have a lot of those guys. They really only have 2 to worry about like that right now. Jamie Collins was one, and they've already re-signed him, and that was great. That was what they needed to do. If you're going to give up a 3rd-round compensatory pick to get a guy like Jamie Collins, then you had to re-sign him. That was priority number 1, and they did that. Now the next priority is going to be Terrell Pryor. Now you need to be careful not to overpay him too much for one good season. It wasn't a great season. It was a good season, but it was a good season nonetheless. But the good thing is for the Cleveland Browns is nobody's going to outbid them. And Terrell Pryor, I'm supposed to have to look at it and say, these guys gave me a shot, and I want to be a part of something. Maybe that's philosophy, who knows? But I would expect at the end of the day they should be able to re-sign Terrell Pryor if they so desire. And they were going to have quite a bit of money in free agency, and they do need to go out and get some talent in free agency because 1 draft, 2 drafts, 3 drafts is not going to fix this. They're going to have to plug in some holes. You've got some money to spend. You have to spend a certain percentage of it anyways. Why not get some veteran talent? Why not just get some upgrades at talent at different positions and field a more competitive NFL-worthy team in 2017? In terms of potential targets in free agency, I look at the safety Tony Jefferson from Arizona as one possibility. Here's a guy, especially with Chandler Jones being on the free agent market. Will the Cardinals franchise him? Will they be focused first since they gave up a 2nd-round pick to get him? Will they be focused on giving him big money first? They could swoop right in the Browns and go after a guy like Tony Jefferson, the guy who I thought played well for the Cardinals in 2016. They need some help on the offensive line. Maybe the guard from Dallas, Ronald Leary. I mean, it's not a big-time splashy stud name, but they don't all have to be splashy stud names to work and be effective. I thought O'Leary was decent at the guard position for the Cowboys in 2016. You're talking about a guy that you might have to overpay a little bit, but it's not huge back up the Brinks truck type of money, and you're going to be able to pick on a team like the Cowboys, who, of course, are in bad salary cap constraints like they are every year because Jerry Jones doesn't know how to manage the damn salary cap. Maybe you go get froggy and you try to get somebody like Trumaine Johnson away from the Los Angeles Rams. They franchised him once. Will they franchise him again? If they don't franchise him, how much money are they willing to invest to keep him? And can you go in and just overbid and pry him away? Joe Hayden looks like the oldest 27, 28-year-old corner I've ever seen in the damn league. They need an infusion of youth and talent and athleticism in that secondary. And if this Browns team could come away with guys like Tony Jefferson and Trumaine Johnson, that would be a really, really good way to go. Ricky Wagner, the offensive tackle from the Ravens, I expect to get a lot of action. Granted, he's a right tackle, but a lot of teams have need at right tackle. I don't think the Ravens are going to re-sign him, especially for the money he's going to be able to command on the market. What better way to bolster yourself while weakening a divisional rival than get a guy like Ricky Wagner And now you sit there and you have Joe Thomas and Ricky Wagner as your bookend tackles. That doesn't look bad. When it comes to the NFL draft, though, this is where they have to make the most hay. It's going to be important to spend some of that money in free agency. That's absolutely true. But at the end of the day, this team's got to hit it big in the NFL draft one of these years. In 2017, they have a chance to potentially do that. You've got 2 first-round picks, number 1 overall and number 12 overall. At the end of the day, this team, regardless of the position, they have to get 2 studs. A lot of people are going to assume it's Myles Garrett at number 1 for the Browns, and it very well might be. But whoever it is, number 1, number 12, they need 2 Pro Bowl caliber players. It really, frankly, doesn't matter what position. It would matter what position if there was a quarterback worth taking number 1 overall, like there was last year, in my opinion, when they had Carson Wentz fall into their lap at number 2. But again, you got picks at 1 and 12. You need 2 stars there. They've got 2 picks in round 2 thanks to trading down when the Titans went up and got Jack Conklin in last year's draft. You know, those 2 second-round picks give you some potential leverage. You got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, a third. You're talking about a team that could be looking at, and I'm sure getting a couple of compensatory picks throughout the way, maybe compensatory picks in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round, somewhere like that. They're going to have lots of draft pick currency. You got to start turning them into players. You got to start turning them into some impact players because the Cleveland Browns desperately need stars and impact players. So if you could take that 2nd round pick and that 3rd round pick, one of those 2nd round picks, a 3rd round pick, and peel back up into round 1 and get 3 first round picks out of this draft, then that's exactly what the hell you need to do. One of those 3 first round picks does need to be a quarterback. It better not be at number 1. But maybe if you really like one of the guys, whether it's Kaiser, Trubisky, Mahomes, maybe you want to get ridiculous and you say Deshaun Watson, whatever the case might be. If you want to take one of those guys at 12, so be it, but you better be right. If not, take another stud and then maybe trade back up into the tail end portion of round 1. If all those quarterbacks are there and most of them are still there and you really like one of them, then you go get him because you have the potential to have that guy under his rookie contract for as much as 5 years. It'd be a very Browns thing to do in terms of taking other players first and then taking a quarterback. But in this particular climate, at this particular time, since they screwed up on passing on Carson Wentz last year, and I continue to bring it up as I should, the simple fact of the matter is they've got to get a young quarterback because if you're really going to hitch your wagon to Cody Kessler, that'll be the 2nd straight mistake you made at the quarterback position after betting 2016 on RGIII. They really need to hit big in this draft. They need 2 Pro Bowlers. And I'm talking about 2 guys that could come in and play at a Pro Bowl level as a rookie and continue to do so for 7, 8, 10 years. They need several starters. To me, with all the picks that they have and the quality of the picks that they have, if the Cleveland Browns do not come out of this draft with 5 to 6 future long-term starters, there is something seriously wrong with this organization. And it is time to get rid of them because they continue to be a stain in the skid mark of all of the National Football League. You've at least, if nothing else, in spite of all the scripts and all the other things, you've given yourself an opportunity, a moment in time, where this could be a real turning point in the history of the organization. We've seen teams in the past have 2 first-round picks and turn them into 2 future Hall of Famers. I think about the Chicago Bears in 1965 with Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus. You think about the Baltimore Ravens in, 1996 with Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 1995 with Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. That's the potential for what you could do. You could find 2 Pro Bowl, All-Pro, Hall of Fame type of players in round 1. And when I mention those guys, Butkus and Sayers weren't really organization changers because Hallis didn't know what the hell he was doing by that point in time in the draft in the 60s and early 70s. But Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks were organization changers, and they made the Bucks from laughingstocks to eventual world champions. Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis came in for a Browns team that turned into the Baltimore Ravens, mind you, and became the cornerstones for that great 2000 Ravens team that went on to win the Super Bowl. And Ray Lewis was still there in 2012 when they won the 2nd one. That's what this draft has to be. The Browns, above all else, they have needs at quarterback, defensive end. You know what? All bullshit aside, it doesn't matter the position. You name it, there's a need. Wide receiver, running back, tight end, offensive tackle, offensive guard, defensive end, defensive tackle, especially if you're switching to a 4-3, which hopefully they are because they need to, especially with the hiring of Greg Williams. They could use help at the linebacker position. They could use help at corner. They could use help at safety. When we start talking about teams like the Cleveland Browns, we can't get caught up on the team needs because they're terrible. They have needs everywhere. So the whole philosophy for this draft and free agency is go get talent and figure out how to fit that talent later. Figure out what to do with that talent later. You can't do shit if you don't have the talent. The Cleveland Browns desperately need talent. There's a chance here for the Skidmarks to make this a moment in time where they really change the fortunes of the organization. But if they can't get it right here, then they're going to be picking in the top 5 for the next half decade easily.